According to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the number of illegal crossings at our southern border has reached the highest level ever recorded in a fiscal year. A surge of 227,000 encounters last month brought the total for the 2022 fiscal year to more than 2.3 million. Now, for comparison, the total encounters in September of 2020, during President Trump's final year in office, was 57,674 migrants. Now, polling consistently shows the border as one of the top 3 issues for swing voters. Now, how could this affect the midterm elections? Is that why the Biden administration is ignoring the issue? Joining me now to discuss this and much more is Congressman Dan Bishop. He is a member of the House Judiciary Committee and the House Homeland Security Committee. He represents North Carolina's 9th Congressional District. Congressman Bishop, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tony. I'm glad to have the chance to be with you again.
Now, you've been very outspoken on the need to stop the chaos at the border. As a member of the House Homeland Security Committee, what's the latest that you're hearing with these record numbers being set?
Well, the first thing I'd say, Tony, is that they delayed the data as long as they could to dump it on a Friday evening because they understand that the debacle that they have created on a rolling basis has reached a crescendo or a climax with this information. The largest number of illegal crossings in the history of the country. And it just gets worse and worse. In some ways, the American people have become numb to these numbers because they're so outlandish each and every month. And yet the American people also know, as they're preparing to move to this election day on November 8th, that the administration is doing nothing to fix it, doesn't care to fix it, and apparently intends for this to go on indefinitely unless the American people decide to put a stop to it.
Yeah, I think you bring a very good point up, is that we've talked about this so often that people become numb to these record-setting numbers. But something that kind of jarred my attention was that in looking through the records, that there was a record number of foreign nationals that were on the terrorist watch list that were caught on the southern border. What do we know about that in terms of, all right, we know that 98 foreign nationals were caught. These were on the terrorist watch list. How many might have gotten through? What kind of individuals are these? How concerned should we be about national security?
To be sure. And it's, Tony, whether it's 25 or 100 on that terror watch list, the terror watch list is not exclusive. We saw what happened before there ever was a terror watch list, that 20 terrorists came into this country and wreaked the destruction on 9/11. I very memorably sat across from Lindsey Graham on an airplane while we were stuck on the tarmac for some time recently. And I asked him about this, and he said, it's just a matter of time. Think about that. So, right, the terrorist watch list, not exclusive. We know that people are getting away from Border Patrol who they don't have the chance to check if they're on the terrorist watch list. And there are people, of course, who would do us harm. They're coming from every country virtually in the world. And the Biden administration's opened our border to let them in. And then Secretary Mayorkas will sit there in front of our committee and he'll tell us over and over again that the border is secure. He needs to be impeached soon.
So the election is coming up. If the Republicans retake the House and have a majority in the House, what type of activity could we see that could stem this flow? I mean, this is an executive function. This comes out of the White House, the executive branch. What can a Republican-controlled Congress do to protect our border?
Well, you're correct to caution people first, Tony, that doesn't mean that we'll take the White House or that we can then begin administering border policy as it should be administered, as President Trump had very successfully done. But what we can do in the first instance is have very penetrating oversight where we dig into not only these numbers that we know about, but the policies that have been sort of behind the curtain, instructions that have been given to subvert American immigration law. I believe we ought to take on oversight, as I've suggested, in a way that's unprecedented and creative and relentless, so that we can show everything the American people need to know moving toward the ensuing election in 2024, when the American people will have a very fundamental decision. Do they want to save the country before the wiping out of our border, the erasure of our border, dooms us to something we cannot possibly recover from? 2024 can't get here soon enough.
Let me bring up another topic before we run out of time on the border, and it's the issue. I mean, we talked about crime. We've seen a number of those that are here in the country illegally who have been involved in crimes. But this fentanyl situation, where, according to some reports, a single largest killer of those between the ages of 18 and 45. Now, some dispute those numbers, but clearly it is a major problem, with about 110,000 people dying last year. Are you confident that, and look, it's a supply and demand. As conservatives, we understand that when there is a demand, there'll be a supply. So we've got some issues here domestically. But do you think that we can, a part of addressing that crisis is cutting the flow off at the border?
No doubt about it. And it has been, the wide open border has obviously, I mean, the two are very related, Tony. And that's what I mean when I talk about things we may not be able to recover from. More people dying, drugs flowing in, and it's a mass poisoning. I don't even think of it as a drug crisis as much as I think of it as a weapon of mass destruction. Chinese precursors manufactured in labs in Mexico, sent across our border, and by tons of people who we don't even know are coming in.
Yeah, Congressman, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it's accidental. I think there is more behind this, and I do think it is both. It is both addressing the supply and the demand, but I think the domestic policy of this administration that has created a moral and spiritual vacuum in this country is creating that demand. And I think that's something that we have to address. Not necessarily Congress, but Congress needs to provide the protections for the faith community to be able to address that. And that's something that's been an attack by this administration. We're going to have to leave it there. Always great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in and joining us on this Monday.
Thank you, Tony.